Greetings from Snake Mountain Boat Works on Tuesday, June 14, 2016. The 1946 Chjris-craft U22, who has lived on Ahmic Lake in Magnetawan, Ontario, which is about 60 miles north of Port Carling, has been with us for some weeks now, and for the most part we've been engaged in diagnostic work, deconstruction, and today I've spent the better part of today removing the ceilings in preparation for the hull work we will be engaging. Having removed the ceilings reveals an awful lot about a boat's history, and I thought you might enjoy going through this one in some detail. Let's take this distance shot to start with. The first thing we notice is that at some time in her life, the owners of this boat elevated the helm station seating. Those two cross pieces of pine certainly aren't original. Something else that we will look at in more detail in a minute. Take a look at that block on the starboard side, about 3 spaces down. It's just above center in the field of vision. Maybe now it's right in the center. Actually, there are 2 of them. There's a blonde one and one that is painted in Chjris-craft bilge paint, Chjris-craft red bilge paint. You might remember that in an earlier clip I was complaining about the fact that when viewed from externally, this boat's butt joints on the top sides are only secured by 4 fasteners, 1 in each corner of each board. Well, we now know why. Well, actually, I don't know why Chjris-craft did this, but if you look at that small block, those are all Frierson head brass screws, Phillips, if you will. Every one of the butt joint blocks in this boat has been executed in the same manner. 4 screws on the outside and a myriad of little tiny guys on the inside. Now if we gaze at that blonde block below, and I've wire brushed both of these to give us a better view of the fasteners, that's a repair. How do I know? All of those fasteners are Canadian square drive stainless steel fasteners. Algonac did not use square drive stainless steel fasteners. As we continue to gaze around the inside of this hull and take a look down at the bilge, we can see that there's been some major work done on this hull. Both chines have been replaced about 3/4 of the way back from the bow. They're entirely new. The sad thing is, whoever executed what, for the most part, looks like a really good repair, decided, rather than to scarf the joint between the old chine and the new, we just did a butt joint and ran a bunch of bolts through and called it good. My goodness. Quite frankly, I'm shocked, because if I were replacing the chines and had already executed the single most difficult part, which is from the bow back, so that you've got the radiuses correct and they change all along, why not way back down here where the chine becomes all but a straight plank? Why don't you just keep right on going? Cut a single plank, or at the very least, where the joint must be, basic joinery tells you, use a scarf joint, not a butt joint. We'll know more when we get the bottom off. I hope I don't find any rot there. I'd really rather not take that apart, because once we take that apart, we are beginning to remove exterior planking, and we'd really like to try to save it all. Gazing into the bilge, we see evidence on port, excuse me, I can get this right, on starboard and port, that the same master woodworker and his beloved butt joints took two of the most critical frames of the boat, other than those directly beneath the engine. But if you think about the boat riding across the water, isn't that just about where it is continually being beaten by water rushing towards the boat as it pounds through the surface? Yet when these two major frames needed repair, they really needed to be replaced, rather than do it correctly and replace the frame from chine to chine, let's just, those butt joints are so wonderful, and I love my carriage bolts. We'll just chop them off and hook them sort of together and call it good. Well, we'll replace those. That's not good. And we can see by looking into the bilge, there's lots of evidence of oil-soaked wood. I am guessing, hoping not, but guessing that once we have her upside down, which will happen in the next few days, we will brace across from gunwale to gunwale in 3 or 4 places to make sure this boat retains its shape. We will particularly brace it at the helm station pass-through. That's an extremely fragile point that the boat must retain its shape while being rolled right there, lest we break up those two beautiful arches. Well, let's take a look at some other areas in a bit more detail. So I've moved forward along the port side of the bow of the hull. I'm just aft of the pass-through from the helm station. I thought you would find value in taking a second look at these two blocks. So the one in red bilge paint is original, and that is how Chjris-craft executed its butt joints in 1946, at least as regards the U22. Here is, if I can find it in the viewfinder, yep, here is another one. My guess is that, remember, World War II has just ended. Supplies are incredibly difficult to find, materials, and it might be that this was a strategy to achieve a viable butt joint with less expenditure of brass fasteners. The standard way to execute one of these would be to have I think we usually use 8 or 10 by 1.5 inches, 1.25 inches, driven in from the outside. There'll be 3 to 4 on each side of the butt joint, and then a second course behind that catches. In other words, the first ones will be right down the middle, and then on each side towards the outer limits of the block, and those blocks are, by the way, quite small. There'll be another course of fasteners. So these appear to be, I pulled a couple of them out, I would say they are 6s by 1.25 inches, maybe 6s by a strong inch. They're not grabbing much wood, and of course they're pulling. They just don't have the strength they would have if they were driven in from the outside. But that's the way it goes. And then down here, there's another. Well, first of all, when the fellow replaced the chines, I guess he replaced some bottom planking. So not only does he love butt joints, he loves short planks. This is just plain idiocy, quite frankly, I'm sorry, I'm probably speaking ill of a man who is long since deceased, but each of those butt joints we see in that floor is just a weak spot. And you can see how the middle one, right next to that shadow, has lifted. The other interesting aspect we see here, and why we can be absolutely certain that those light boards are the result of some attempt to execute some kind of repair, is that what we face in taking this apart is that originally Chjris-craft ran these same screws, fasteners that we find in this block, are repeated from inside out. In other words, the interior very thin planking that runs on a bias that we can see right before us now, out into the plank. There must be several thousand of them driven, but they're also all Frierson head, or if you will, Phillips head brass screws. Our repair person, being in Canada, having access only to what is the Canadian standard, the square drive fastener, executed his repair with square drive fasteners throughout. So what we find that's quite positive is that the bilge stringers are in great shape. The transom framing is in great shape. I am guessing that set of frames that we see right there, you can see how they've pulled away from the floor, and then the next one behind from the bottom planking, the next one back has pulled away as well, has pulled away quite significantly. I think prudence is going to require that we at least give serious consideration replacing both of those. The next one is so grease-soaked that I doubt it will hold bilge paint, let alone clear penetrating epoxy sealer. But the next step is to brace it. Actually brace it quite heavily. We will embarrass ourselves again with yet another attempt at flipping a humongous boat. But we've tested some additional and new techniques, and we're hoping we have it much better than when we flipped that Shepherd. One final observation. The keel is really soaked in oil, and it kind of scares me. It looks like there's been work on the garboards right directly beneath the engine, but we'll know more once we have her upside down and pull off her skin and have a good look at her skeleton. So goodbye for now from Snake Mountain Boat Works. Thank you very much.